regularly to help.
Our guest this week has gone from working in a cropping gang to academia, but always with a connection to the whenua. Nick Roskruge became a professor of ethnobotany, the study of the connection between people and plants. We're in his garden, where it seems every plant has a story.
And what's that plant over there with the long wavy leaves?
That's from the hokianga. That's what they call Cook's lemon. So it's an original cutting off the original contact time, so it's a lemon.
As Nick will tell us, his studies have led him to spend time with indigenous people and their crops in the Americas and the Pacific. His focus is now on keeping traditional Māori horticultural knowledge alive, starting from his own Manawatu garden in the foothills of the Tararua Range. On a windy winter's day, we stepped out of the chill and into his greenhouse to check out some of the many varieties of kumara drying off after harvest.
This one is huti huti, which is this one here. This one is the parent for the owaraka, the one you can buy in the shop. And you can see it's got the shape of it. It's quite knobbly compared to these ones.
Yeah. They're all completely different, really, aren't they? Different colours, different shapes.
This one here is Dorpia. It's from up north. Most of them are quite skinny, but there's 2 or 3 bigger ones. What's the pink one called? Nakihi, yeah. And I think that's it, that commercially we're so familiar with the 2 or 3 or 4 that the shops have. And there's all these ones sort of in local collections.
All right, well, I'll get you first of all to introduce yourself. Any sort of introduction you'd like to give to the listeners?
Kia ora rā. My name is Nick Rahiri Roskruge, and I'm a retired horticulture person, I guess is how I'd call myself. But I was previously a professor in ethnobotany at Massey in horticulture, and prior to that I was involved with gangs and harvest operations sort of around the lower North Island. I'm originally from Taranaki. My whānau, my family, come from the north of Taranaki, so Motunui, Waitara, Te Atiawa, Ngāti Tama, that's my mum's side. But a lot of my younger years were down here in the Rangitika and the Manawatu, and that's where the potatoes and...
Yeah, tell us about those times with the potatoes and the harvesting.
Well, in those days, Māori were the labouring component of crop production, so all the harvesting, the grading, the loading trucks and cartage, all that sort of thing was all done by gangs that would come in and contract. So that's what we did, and I did that for years. We were seasonal workers, so you worked on that, and then on the off-season you might go and work on a apple harvest somewhere else. You're reasonably mobile. I spent a couple of years working on kiwi fruit. We would go to Aokuni and pick Brussels sprouts and those sorts of crops just to earn a few extra dollars, that type of thing.
So you moved from this very practical world into an academic world.
Yeah, it was never a case of one or the other. The study was something I'd never done before, so that was a whole new sort of life. And I never intended it to become a job sort of opportunity. But again, in the mid to late 90s, there wasn't a lot of work out there, and I just went back on the paddocks until Massey rang me and asked me to go in and look after a program for Māori agriculture, basically. That's a good maybe 25 years ago.
So what has been the main focus of your studies or of your teaching?
Probably crop production. I did my PhD in traditional soil management, so soil science, in science, because I didn't want it to be seen as just a Māori topic, which often sort of affected how other people valued what was in that study. So mostly these root crops, and I spent sort of 12 months in Peru working with the potato collections in the Kumara. Spent a few months in the US on an exchange program, again with the breeding programs, but also with the American Indian program with corn and different crops. Been an eventful few years, different to what most people would have done in the academic world, because I haven't got caught up in research, but I have got caught up in working with communities.
And what would be the main takings, do you think, from the studies that you've done?
I guess is that there's all this diversity that is undervalued, certainly because people look at agriculture and horticulture as economic activities first, so they tend to see the return on the activities they're involved in, whereas take a step back and you've got all this happening, in community level, and since COVID, there's all these people now wanting to plant community gardens, and there's been a real shift towards producing food, relatively short-lived, because unless there's a really strong leader, and that it tends to do a season and then fade. But all the same, there's still that reinvestment of people being keen to get involved, and that's what we do at the collective. Is we sort of spend time at the community level and sharing seeds, but helping people do it properly or do it well.
Tell us about the collective. This is the Māori Horticultural Collective.
So it's called Rahiri Roskruge. Its genesis is in about 2003, and it was really partly around our projects, giving the Māori community of interest an opportunity to be involved, so help share a bit of information about those projects, but also to share seed and to share experience, I guess. It's very active. But we also have produced a whole lot of books which are really to capture some of that conversation, the kōrero around some of the traditional foods, but also how to work with crops like kumara, and just put information that's peer-reviewed in a cultural sense so that it's good quality information for our generations coming through. So the books, they're sold online, but through the collective, but also through some other places too, libraries and schools, just trying to ensure that our kids, our mokos, have access to good knowledge around potential foods and crops and just the whenua generally,
Has a lot of knowledge been lost, do you think?
I think a huge amount, to be fair, and a huge amount of locally relevant knowledge, people's experience of frosts, for example, the different locations where it can be a little bit frost-free or can be the opposite and you get a worse frost than others. So just those sorts of experience and knowledge is definitely lost. But also the ability to work with change. The old generations, they had a stronger, probably a more intimate relationship with the food that they ate, and they grew, preserved, prepared, all that sort of thing. They worked seasonally and all of those types of things, and I think a lot of that has gone. We've become very reliant on bringing food in. Food sovereignty and food security are hugely important, and they're important for well-being because they contribute to people feeling, not feeling, but extending a relationship that's been going on for generations to themselves, to the next generation, to the next generation. And it's an important nuance culturally because it connects, and it connects across generations.
Nick Roskruge of Tahuri Whenua, the Māori Horticultural Collective, in his greenhouse near Linton in Manawatu.